Hi friends. The 19th century in an Eastern European village is often presented to us as an idyll. High moral standards, birch trees, round dances, chaste boys and girls. But prepare to be surprised. The mores of those times can be shocking, and ethnographic notes of the 19th century will make even modern people blush. Today we'll talk about the intimate life of Russian peasants of the 19th century, how they lived in crowded huts, what games were organized by young people, what was valued in girls, how landlords' harems were formed, and why life with your own husband was often a heavy burden. Let's analyze where the saying "beating means love" came from and what is snokhachchestvo. So, meet our heroine, Olga Semyonova-Tyanshanskaya, the daughter of that famous traveler and geographer. She was still very young when a boy artist in love with her committed suicide because she did not respond to his feelings. The girl was crushed, and only a few years later fell in love herself. He was also an artist, a family friend who taught her siblings to paint. He, too, fell in love with Olga. She was overjoyed, but her lover died unexpectedly. At the end of the 19th century, Olga decided to devote her life to science. At the age of 23, she received a silver medal from the Russian Geographical Society for her collection of folk songs. Later, she immersed herself in the study of rituals, holidays, and fairy tales, saving them from oblivion. But it was the study of peasant life, including the intimate aspects of everyday life, that brought her real fame. And the results will be a huge shock even centuries later. It is generally believed that in the Russian Empire, morals were very strict, not counting the current promiscuity. Some say it's time to go back to the moral 19th century, and to finally do away with the consequences of the sexual revolution of the 20th. Except that there seems to have been no need for a sexual revolution in the Russian Empire at all. Of course, in different provinces, mores differed somewhat, but in most peasant girls and boys were already quite free, both in love and in the choice of a spouse. And mores reigned there in such a way that today's young people would seem just a model of morality. This is what Olga Semyonova-Tyanshanskaya saw. Now you can't find a chaste boy anymore, and there are very few girls like that. In some villages there is still a custom to match very young girls of 12 to 14 years old with boys of the same age. Young people got acquainted on the streets, local analogs of nightclubs. Girls and married women would gather in the evenings, and boys would come from neighboring villages. After round dances, many went to the haystacks or barns. Parents sometimes agreed to the marriage after learning that there was already sin between the young. In different provinces, maiden honor was treated differently. In the Arkhangelsk region, innocence didn't matter, while in Voronezh, a girl could be severely beaten for losing her honor. However, such ties often ended in a wedding. What sin is there if you have covered it with a crown? In winter, the streets were replaced by vecherki, gatherings in a rented hut. Guys brought vodka, played cards, sang and danced. Everyone sat on each other's laps and kissed endlessly. There were complex kissing techniques that few people know about today. Some games were shockingly explicit. In Cowgirl, a guy would crawl naked on all fours while the girls milked him. Refusal to participate could turn into a beating. And Gaski, described as early as the 16th century, were dances that ended with group liaisons in the extinguished light. But the darkest pages are the landlords' harems. Serf girls were completely disenfranchised. Noblemen like Viktor Strachinsky raped hundreds of his serfs. Even after peasants complained, the cases were hushed up. It was only with the abolition of serfdom that this practice began to wane. The life of a peasant woman remained hard even after marriage. Life in a crowded hut excluded privacy. In the summer, they secluded themselves in haystacks. In the winter, in the bathhouse. Intimate life was regulated by church prohibitions, and confession could result in punishment for indecency. Women gave birth to 8-12 children, of which 3 to 4 survived. They gave birth in the fields, almost immediately returning to work. Constant physical labor led to the prolapse of internal organs, which was perceived as commonplace. Domestic violence was considered the norm. Women were beaten for any offense, and sometimes just for fun. Husbands saw it as a way of building authority. Even in 1926, 60% of peasants considered wife-beating necessary. Sister-in-law is another dark side of village life. A father-in-law could start an affair with his daughter-in-law while his son was away. Refusal threatened unbearable living conditions. This custom was widespread not only in Russia but also in other Eastern European countries. Olga Semyonova-Tyanshanskaya recorded these facts with horror, but her writings were not an indictment of the peasants. She loved the people and strove to preserve their culture. Many traditions and songs have survived thanks to her efforts. Fortunately, times have changed and many barbaric customs are a thing of the past. But the story of peasant life is important to understand how far we have drifted from those realities. Olga died at the age of 37, but her work lives on.